Ohai. Alchevsk. The city of regional value of the Luhansk region of Ukraine. Since 2014 it is controlled by the self-proclaimed partially recognized Luhansk People's Republic. From the 1920th, the industrial settlement of Voroshilovsk, the center of Voroshilovsky district of the Luhansk district of the Donetsk province. Erstvers the Nusser. From 1931 to 1961, the city of Voroshilovsk, in 1961-1991 cities of Communarsk of the Usser Voroshilograd area. Geographical location. The city is located near the western border of the Luhansk region near the automobile route M-04. Is a part of Alchevsk and Stakhanov agglomeration. The territory of the city mainly flat with small steppe hills and beams of the rivers. Average height above sea level -211 meters. Neighboring settlements. The city of Pervelsk-Artemivsk in the southwest, Bryanka in the west and the northwest, the villages of Petrovka and Kamenka in the north, the settlements of Lotikovo, Carpathians in the northeast, Mikolovka in the east, the village of Malokonstantinovka in the southeast. Adjoins. In the south. History. Alchevska's working settlement arose in 1895 in connection with construction near the railway station Yerevka-Ekaterinskoye of the railroad. Nowadays the Communarsk station. Steelworks of the Donetsk and Yurevsky Metallurgical Society. DIMS. The Donetsk and Yurevsky plant, nowadays Alchevsk Metallurgical Plant. The population, the developing city, consisted mainly of workers of steel works, local and alien. It were specialists foreigners. Germans, the French, Belgians. The qualified workers metallurgists invited from Yuzovsky, Bryansk, Ekaterinoslav, and other plants, and landless peasants from nearby provinces. During the acute economic crisis of the beginning of the 20th century, without having sustained the competition to the foreign companies dominating in Donbass and having been refused from the imperial government on a request for the credit, the Kharkiv merchant of the First Guild Alchevsky rushed on May 7, 1901 under the train at the Tarskoye Selo station in St. Petersburg. In 1903 the station in Yerevka-Jesk Donetskaya Kameneyu Doroga was renamed into Alchevsk. I received the name from the station the settlement which entered the Alchevsk district with the center in Lazovopavlok, and over time to the city of regional value Voroshilovsk. Workers of the settlement took active part in revolution of 1905-1907, but the revolt got beaten. In 1910 the Vasilievsky Territorial School and Private Diamond and Yurevsky Commercial Average School in which 190 people studied opened. In the factory settlement treated the cultural centers. Private circus where visiting circus and theatrical companies, cinema, so-called summer theater, a bowling alley and casino acted. In 1913 housing stock of Alchevsk made 38,000 m. It were private houses, including huts, mud huts and state factory. From 51-35 workers of the Duma plant of 1,300 people lived in barracks, 540 in barracks and about 1,600 in 270 stone family houses. Civil War. In 1917, 1920 the power in Alchevsk changed repeatedly. On April 26, 1918 the city was entered by Austro-German troops. In December 1918, Belokazaki of the General Krasnov, summer of 1919, Denikonets. In intervals between them the power was taken by Bolsheviks. On December 26, 1919 in the city the Soviet power was finalized. Is it part of the USSR? In 1920 on the place of the former industrial settlement of Yurevka, including the station item in structure. Alchevsk administrative, old and new colonies, the territory of the city was defined previously. After the end of civil war, with transition to the new economic policy when there were no funds for restoration of the destroyed large enterprises, the Donetsk and Yurevsky plant which became state on May 3, 1923 it was temporarily preserved. Closing of the plant led to considerable reduction of the population. By the end of 1923 in Alchevsk there were only 800 inhabitants. In 1923 the Luhansk district in Alchevsk was formed. The status, the urban-type settlement, became the center of the Alchevsk district. According to the resolution of the Luhansk Okrspolkom, merge of Gorodoshinsky district with Alchevsk which was complete in August of the same year began spring of 1925. In 1925 the decision on removal of steel works from preservation was made, and in March 1926 one of blast furnaces. The domain shop stood since 1918, since the German occupation, is restored here, and the construction of new blast furnaces and other objects soon began. According to preliminary data of the population census which took place in December 1926 in the territory of the Alchevsk district, 55974 persons lived. The population of Alchevsk made 160,000 people. In process of input of the new enterprises, such as the coke chemical plant which became operational in 1929, the population of Alchevsk grew and by 1939 made about 550,000 people. In 1930 the edition of the city newspaper, Bolshevitsky Shlyg, began. In 1931 name Voroshilovsk was appropriated to the city, in honor of the famous Soviet statesman K. Voroshilov, who began the labor and revolutionary activity at the Dumo plant, and it became the regional center. In 1932 the structure of the city included the item Vasilyevka, the item Zhilovka and the farm of Dolchik. In borders of this building the territory of the pre-war city decided on the center on crossing of streets factory, the 1st Mai, Taras Shevchenko and Karl Marx. Since 1932 construction of multi-story buildings began, the water supply system, the sewerage appeared. City housing stock exceeded 160,000 square meters in 1940. The city equipped with modern conveniences, planted trees and shrubs, the area of green plantings reached 200 hectares. From the beginning of the Great Patriotic War thousands of volunteers Alchevsk declared the desire to battle against aggressors. The enterprises of the city reconstructed work on a military harmony. The equipment of the metallurgical and coke chemical plants, in connection with danger of occupation of the city by Wehrmacht, was taken out to the Urals, to Kuzbas and Uzbekistan. On July 12, 1942, Voroshilovsk was occupied by Germans almost for 14 months. On September 2, 1943, the Soviet soldiers of the 51st Army of the 63rd Rifle Corps, as a part of the 315th Rifle Division and a part of forces of the 91st Rifle Division of the Southern Front of the Soviet Army during the Donbas operation, exempted the city from the German troops. This city has the heroes of the Soviet Union P.N. Lipovenko and 5.1 Medvedev. At once after release of the city, his restoration with participation of experts from other parts of the country began. In particular, recovery group from Chelyabinsk. At restoration of the industrial enterprises, their reconstruction was conducted. In 1943, the Specialized Construction and Installation Trust, Alchevsk, was created. Recovery work was conducted by the accelerated rates. For years of the first post-war 5 years period, 1946-1950, the pre-war level of industrial production was reached and surpassed. Employees of Alchevsk Trust constructed new blast and Martin furnaces, rolling mills, coke and byproduct recovery departments, the enterprises of the construction industry, the light and food industry. On the place of old, the new enterprises grew. There were large enterprises of the construction industry, the plants of building constructions, concrete goods, large panel housing construction, construction materials, processings of slags. Also, in the first post-war years, building of new territories by the master plan of development of Voroshilovsk began. On streets, the embankment and Gorky boat, 4-storied residential and public buildings, Stal Stadium and 2T Metallurgist, whose project is noted by the diploma at an all-Ukrainian competition, were built 3. In the 1958 years, Lenin Avenue, then Mira Avenue, began to take the specific form on which the Leningrad architecture was created. It is one of the most beautiful places of the city also today. Since 1953 I began Massachusetts, and with the 1957th industrial building of avenues and residential districts. For satisfaction of needs of the population, a number of the industrial enterprises of various industries were constructed. Bread baking complex, milk plant, sewing and haberdashery factories, plant of household goods. Thanks to the director of plant Piet Meyer, his persistence, the area's first trolleybus line is started. For development of the social sphere, palaces of culture, libraries, movie theaters, stadiums, gyms, new buildings of educational institutions, schools, and others were constructed by institutions of welfare appointment. In 1967-1968 the Kommunarsky Children's Railroad, which carried out the activity about 25 years, up to 1992, was constructed. From 1961 to 1991 the city was called Kommunarsk. Since 1965 it is the city of regional value. Is it part of Ukraine? After declaration of independence as Ukraine, on the city referendum which took place on December 1, 1991, the population supported return to the city of the old historical name Alchevsk. In A.K. Alchevsky's memory. In May 1995 The Cabinet of Ukraine approved the decision on privatization of the construction materials which were in the city of the plant, the signal plant, coke chemical plant, ATP-10915, ATP-10967, Construction and Installation Trust, Temp Factory, Efficiency Plant and Alchevsk Tons Manufacturing Enterprise. In July 1995 the decision on privatization of Alchevsk metallurgical plant was approved. In 1997 technical training colleges No. 40 operating in the city and No. 81 united in Technical Training College No. 40 and the City Industrial Technical School was turned into branch of the Donbas Mining and Metallurgical Institute. War on Donbas. At the beginning of March 2014 in the city there took place meetings of pro-Russian citizens. According to the Ukrainian media, meetings were preceded by repeated provocative messages in social networks from the deputy of City Council NZ. Boyko about allegedly arrival in the city of buses with groups of radicals, Banderovites, that created panic among some inhabitants. After one of such messages about 300 people occupied the building of the Executive Committee of the City Soviet of People's Deputies and stayed the whole night there. In the night of April 5 employees of Alpha of the SU for interrogation detained 3 activists of the local anti-Maidan movement from the Alchevsk Guard and the Alchevsk team. Alexander Krasko, Evgeny Verkhovod and Dmitry Soldatov. Citizens by means of social networks organized a protest meeting at the SU building in which several hundreds of people participated. The central street was blocked and the demand to release detainees is made. In the afternoon, after interrogation, detainees were released and protesters marched on the downtown. On April 29 activists removed the Ukrainian flag from the building of the city council. On May 2 the Ukrainian nationalists hung out the flag, but almost at once it was removed according to the mutual arrangement of pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian forces. On April 30 the mayor met representatives of territorial community, supporters of LPR. Following the results of a meeting with the purpose of maintenance of public consent and law and order between the parties, the memorandum of holding a local referendum was signed. On May 11 there took place the referendum on declaration of independence of LPR. Bulletins, as well as in other settlements, were made on usual paper of a format by listing on the printer or photocopying. On bulletins there was a black and white image and a question of support of the act of the state independence of LPR with possible answers, yes/no, in the Russian and Ukrainian languages. The early presidential elections which were taking place on May 25 were disrupted. Any polling precinct in the city didn't open. On the eve of elections, members of District Election Commission No. 117 received threats about punishment in case of elections, and also the room of OIG was robbed. On May 29 the deputy of the city council Vladislav Dinego at a meeting made the requirement to make the decision on recognition of the Luhansk People's Republic and to stop ADO. The city council voted for adoption of the decision on the organization of activity of local government on the basis of the relevant resolution of the government of LPR, that is actually recognized the republic. 48 voices for, 2-4 refrained. On June 6, the building Alchevsk DSU was peacefully taken under control by the armed supporters of LPR. Massachusetts media reported occupation of the building, which Perov fast wasn't, as he was protected by one person on duty. By order of 5.1. KOS-UG. Capture took place peacefully, except for several precautionary shots in air. On November 2 in the city, as well as in all self-proclaimed Luhansk People's Republic, there took place elections of parliament and the head of LPR. At the same time, on polling precincts issued the social cards of LPR, which were, according to statements of the authorities, an indispensable condition for receiving social payments and rendering the emergency medical care. Reduction of number of polling precincts, which usually open in the city for other elections, resulted in big turns on polling precincts till late time. From the middle of 2014, the city council in Alchevsk doesn't work. Till March 2014, 3 fractions: Prairie, 49 people. With the KPU, 4 persons. BU, 2 persons. Worked. Powers of the city authorities are carried out by the city administration of Alchevsk, created by the authorities of the self-proclaimed LPR. From the beginning of war on Donbass and declaration of LPR at Alchevsk metallurgical plant, there were constant problems with supply of raw materials and sales of products, which led to a full stop of production in February 2017. However, in December, production was resumed. According to messages of the Ukrainian media, allegedly on December 25, 2014, Alexei Moscovoy stated the idea of return to the city of Alchevsk of the name Communarsk. However, residents of Alchevsk denied this information. Everything since establishment and existence of a rank the Honorable Citizen of Alchevsk, a high and honorary title, 39 people. For 2018. Are awarded. Population. In January 1989, the population was 125,502 people. According to a census of 2001, 119,193 people lived in the city. For January 1, 2013, the population was 111,360 people. Because of fighting in the east of Ukraine, outflow of the population from the city began. The greatest waves July-August 2014 and January-February 2015. According to the Ukrainian research conducted in September 2015, the city was left by 28,104 people. The remaining number of inhabitants was 82370 people. According to Ukraine, for January 1, 2019, the population was 107,438 people. Economy. Alchevsk, the large industrial center. Primary branches of the industry: metallurgical and coke chemical. There also developed the industry of building materials, electromechanical, construction, easy and food. In the city work 17 industrial enterprises, among which Alchevsk metallurgical plant, Alchevsk coke chemical plant, and else Metalli Polymery, the plant on putting polymer on galvanized steel, and else plant of steel fraction, the plant on production of steel fraction. Besides, in the city, the enterprises of transport services sector, construction work. In 2013, the first electric power plant, seats of Alchevsk metallurgical plant, is started. The report on budget implementation for 2007 is approved in the sum of 237,357,900 hryvnias. Income of the city budget for 2008 is approved of 236,221,650 hryvnias, including 8,741,300 hryvnias are subject to transfer in the state budget of Ukraine. Public transport in the city is presented by trolleybuses, share taxis. Historically, the trolleybus was a main type in passenger traffic of the city. In the late 90s to the trolleybus, private buses and minibuses increased. Routes of buses and share taxis duplicate trolleybus, but have insignificant additions or deviations. Nevertheless, in connection with long-term degradation of trolleybus traffic, the role of the last steadily increases. Fare in trolleybuses -10 rubles, in share taxis -20 rubles, on a route Alchevsk, Pervelsk. On the city, -8. The trolleybus movement was opened in 1954, at the initiative of P.A. Miri. Alchevsk became the first in the Luhansk region city with the trolleybus movement. After declaration of LPR, the trolleybus economy falls into decay. The park of working cars is reduced by 5 times, the movement unstable and with big intervals. Share taxis in the city appeared in the late 90s. Routes almost completely duplicate them trolleybus that led to decline of the last. Now share taxis transport more than a half of all passengers and work at 20 routes, most of which part continues to duplicate trolleybus. Operating mode of the majority of routes from 5:30 till 20 o'clock. Suburban transportations are generally made by buses. Bus station around the central market. Share taxis to the cities of Bryanka and Stakhanov from Gorky Street. Area of the central market. Buses and share taxis to Isakovsky of a reservoir from a ring of Metallurgov Avenue. Miri Street. Bus station O. To around the central market, according to the general plan of the city, in the future is planned to be moved to the new place in 200-300 m from present. Owing to military operations in the territory of the Luhansk and Donetsk regions since 2014, long-distance transport almost doesn't function. Long-distance passenger traffic. The railway station, the Kommunarsk station of the Donetsk Railroad. The bus station located near the highway M-04 Znamenka, Luhansk, is Varino. To Volgograd through Donetsk. Bus traffic to the cities of Rostov-on-Don, Moscow. The message minibuses through Lviv, Mayorsk, with the cities of Dnieper, Kiev, Kharkiv. Share taxis to the city of Luhansk from Metallurgov Avenue Ring. Education. Preschool education. 26 preschool educational institutions. Secondary education. The first school was constructed in 1907 at the expense of the industrialist Alchevsk, on the project of the architect A. Eshman. It had the status of a factory educational institution for training of employees of steel works, with the 4-year term of training. Since 1911 the term of training became 6 years. At the Soviet power were constructed school No. 2. On Zavodskoye Street. And School No. 3. On Gorky Street. Other schools were constructed in post-war years, in the 1950th, the head of the 1990th. For coordination, the methodological help to schools, inspection of educational process of bringing to heads of schools of ministerial training programs. The Department of National Education was created. Department of Education of LPR. Since November 2016, Lamtugova Svetlana Petrona directs Department of Education. Now in Alchevsk 17 comprehensive institutions carry out the activity. 7 high comprehensive schools. 3 teaching and educational complexes. 2 high specialized schools with profound studying of objects of physical and mathematical cycle. No. 22 and with a profound learning of foreign languages. H. Alchevsk. 4 gymnasiums. The higher education. Donbas State Technical University. The Ukrainian legal address. And also a part of teachers. In 2014 moved to Lysychansk. Material and technical resources, as well as a part of the faculty, remained in Alchevsk. This university exists only in legal and educational space of the self-proclaimed LPR, as by the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine it was closed and attached to the East Ukrainian University of Vladimir Dal. Culture. Museums. Alchevsk City Historical Museum. City Historical Museum. City Historical Museum. Geological and Mineralogical Museum. Museum of History of Steelworks. Museum of History of the Coke Chemical Plant. Museum of History of the University. Palaces of Culture. The Fountain near Himikov Recreation Center. Netelergov Recreation Center. Recreation Center of Ilyich. Himikov Recreation Center. Soet. Stroitly Recreation Center. Movie theaters don't work since 2014. Near Movie Theater. Spartak Movie Theater. Movie Theater in Stolitsa Shopping Center 3rd floor. 2009-2014. Nowadays Kino Rus Movie Theater. 2019 end of century. Closed. Netelard Movie Theater. Monument of Architecture, 1950, heads of the 1990th. Rock music. In the musical and cultural plan, the city of Alchevsk gained fame as the hometown a punk rock of the Fifth Crew group. Till 1996, Otbroski of Society. Sites. Sacred and Nikolaev Cathedral. Lenin Avenue. Lenin Square. Monument to 5. 1. Lenin. Himikov Recreation Center. Netelergov Recreation Center. Recreation Park of the Victory. Reconstruction and upclassing of the territory is carried out. 30 Latia Pobody Square. Reservoirs. On the east in the country. In the territory of Privalsky district. There is an Isakovsky Reservoir. In the territory of the city there are also ponds. Hospital, school, Vasilivsky, Yashikovsky, administrative, first and second Orlovy, top and lower Limansky. Sport. Football club, Stal. Coxacum Stal basketball club. Stal Stadium. Women's team of the highest league on table tennis of Donba Sports School -1. The route for cross-country race. Pool. Children's and Youth Sports School No. 1. Children's and Youth Sports School No. 2. Yacht Club. Onisakovsky Reservoir. In the city competitions in e-drag racing and the sports extreme automobile games Encounter and Title Quest were once held. Accident at the coke chemical plant. On May 5, 1979 on a coxsacum avoided the storage of sulfuric acid, therefore there was a leak more than 600 tons of acid which flowed directly on streets. Krasnik Partisan Street. Mensinsky Street. Worst. Tal suffered by 17 trolleybuses' tires were completely spoiled. Military units were attracted to elimination of accident. The stream of acid reached approximately the city market and further, on a relief, went to the Oriole ponds. Urgently there 2 tons of potash, all cash stock, were lowered, and then, in addition, lime. Despite all traumatic nature of an event and scale of accident, contrary to messages of the Western media, in particular the Voice of America radio station reported about accident and the human victims in the first hour, victims among inhabitants weren't. In the winter of 2006, Alchevsk became known for accident in the sphere of city infrastructure. The happened accident in many respects repeated a situation of 1972 when there was an accident on the factory boiler house and the city was left without heating for 7 days. After this accident by the Soviet authorities for needs of Alchevsk and the nearby cities, one more boiler house east was built. The cost of construction new, 3.6 million rubles. In the night of January 22, 2006 there was a break of a heating main from the boiler house east that forced to make her emergency stop in the morning, at a temperature on the street of 35°C. In the afternoon, after an emergency stop of the second, from 2, defrosting of all heating system, of a considerable part of housing, room, stop of the city happened the boiler house of the city, factory, because of emergency shutdown of the electric power because the discharge of water from a system wasn't made. Owing to strong wear of systems of the central heat supply, the city in frosts appeared without heat that resulted in need of acceptance of emergency measures on heating restoration. In the city a state of emergency was declared. Expression use, the Alchevsk tragedy, was fixed both in media and in use, by a synonym of manifestations of a catastrophic situation of city infrastructure since then. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.